Welcome back to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. Happy you've tuned into the program. Want to check more out about those companies, those coupon codes that help support the program and bring it to you each week? Our parent website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, underneath the Season 9 tab and the Money tab at the top of the page. Well, Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Ashlie Thomas is an author, food security expert, and home gardening advocate, and entrepreneur known on social media as the Mocha Gardener. Welcome to the program, Ashlie.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we want to thank you for taking time out of your day to educate Holly, myself, and all of our listeners. And I'll start with this because we always are curious on how individuals get involved in gardening. What is your story? Was it something that you found? Was it something that you had as a child, or you found later on in life?
You know, I love these origin stories. So I did not grow up gardening. However, I was a big nature kid. So I was outside playing in the dirt. I wasn't afraid of mud and dirt and animals and organisms at all. Hence why I went into STEM as a career. But yeah, I eventually just, started to really look at this bigger issue of food. Later on in my adulthood, I watched my grandfather, who had this small garden that he would maintain in a town that my family's from. It was called Effingham, South Carolina. And I would watch him maintain this small garden every season. And I was just so fascinated with how he was growing food. So I was a foodie, but also kind of going into this path of, public health and really looking at the ties of what we eat and how it impacts our bodies. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was so fascinating. And so I really combined my love of just being outdoors, being in the soil with food, and of course, just respecting and existing or coexisting with nature.
Now, I'm going to ask this because your grandfather growing the garden, are you able to grow a garden the way he did, or did he do something that you just haven't figured out that magic?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, thankfully, my grandfather is still here with us. I'm growing differently, on a bigger scale than my grandfather was. Over time, I've kind of learned other techniques, that actually allow us to optimize, growing year round, because he was only utilizing or growing a few vegetables, doing kind of row crops only in the summertime. And so, he's kind of learned, a lot from me, through my evolution as a gardener, but I've also learned a lot from him as well. So that's really been a very enjoyable experience. And he's part of the garden that I've been cultivating, even more recently.
Now, you're passionate about food security. Number one, for those who are not familiar with that term, what is that? And two, was there a time in your life where you had that issue, or you knew somebody that did, and that's what spurred you into that line of that field? Yeah.
So just to kind of define that term, I know that we hear about it more in more recent times. It's just kind of like a buzzword, but food security is basically the actual definition is it exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to enough safe and nutritious food that will help them to meet their dietary needs and preferences for an active, healthy life. I know that sounds like a lot of words, but basically it's saying that, food's got to be available. It's got to be accessible. It's got to be affordable. And it's got to be utilized in a way that it's safe for people to consume, and not just at one time, but also consistently. And that's important because a lot of folks will say, oh, well, I'm not food insecure because I'm not starving or experiencing starvation, or I'm not hungry. But even the nutritional value of the foods that we eat can really determine where you are on that spectrum, because it is a spectrum. And to answer your question about, why I'm so deeply passionate about this is because I lived this. I lived it in Effingham, South Carolina, where we were in the deep country. We didn't have, really any food within a 35-mile radius. I think more recently we had, there's a Dollar General now, but we didn't have anything. We had like one little blinking yellow light. But that was it. So nutritious foods were kind of inaccessible. And of course, that kind of equates to socioeconomics as well. And so anytime we were able to get to it, it had to be affordable as well. And that was a challenge in that area. Alternatively, growing up in suburbia, there were a lot of fast food restaurants where I live. And a lot of folks would think, well, I eat every day, and I ate every day. But it's the content or the quality of what we're eating that really determines the nutritional value. And so what I hope to do is to really shine light on really what food security is. And it helps us to really re-examine or reframe our understanding of if we're truly getting the consistent nutrient-dense foods that we need regularly. And I can tell you, even in that place, and I define this in the book, it's called a food swamp, with all of those fast food joints just being readily accessible. Getting that nutrient-dense food was a challenge.
And I'm sure you talk about food deserts. Is that kind of the same as a food, or the opposite of a food swamp?
Yes, great question. So a food desert, if we had to think about a desert, right? We often think, oh, it's void of organisms. It's actually not. Organisms exist. It's just, they're not really conducive to, they require a bit more of a more fertile environment. And so in a desert, there's not a lot of things there. Life is there, but it's not a lot of things. And so in a food desert, that would be an example of Effingham, that deeply rural community that I lived in. One blinking light and access to any store with food items was about 35 minutes away, versus a food swamp. There's a saturation of different types of food options, but they're oftentimes like fast food or ultra processed foods that are available. So yeah, when you think about a swamp, it's just filled with different types of food options that are not necessarily nutritionally dense.
So your book is How to Become a Gardener, Find Empowerment in Creating Your Own Food Security. Let's talk about it. You talked about it a bit just now, but what is something in there besides talking about, the food security, that would interest our listeners to pick up a copy?
Yes. So, I'm thankfully, I don't go full, nerd mode into food swamps and food deserts. How I've reframed this book is to really help empower people to really understand, what is the state of food security, but even to look at a mirror and say, what does that mean for me? And looking at how gardening can serve as a vessel for us being able to create and perhaps enhance our ability to get access to greater food security. And so with How to Become a Gardener, it's basically a practical how-to guide. I'm not saying, and I wrote the book to not show people how to garden, even though I'm providing some very comprehensive tips on how to do so successfully. It's more so the evolution of how to become this person, this steward of the environment, but also of spaces to actually grow food productively. And in turn, you're not just producing food and cultivating this green space, but also cultivating things within yourself to become that steward of, your environment, but also your community.
Well, what is the most common hurdle, do you think, that stops people from gardening or starts gardening, and how can we overcome that? How can we encourage people to go, hey, it's not as difficult as you think it may be?
Yeah. I have had to even address this within myself recently because I'm growing a whole new garden space. But one of the things I would say is really to just kind of look at, starting small. And I'm a firm believer in making sure that you increase the likelihood of succeeding. So, you don't have to, and I know Instagram and social media will show you all of these gorgeous gardens. And I even look back at my garden. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And then oftentimes we compare ourselves and think, I want to get just like that. But, really level setting your expectations, going into it, thinking about what is within your capacity, what is within, your ability right now. And you can always cultivate that and develop more, but start small. And then, don't be afraid to fail. Actually, failure, I was just speaking with someone else about this. Whenever we fail something, that is evidence that we actually tried. We made an effort. So when things don't go as we planned for them to go, there's genuinely a lesson in that. And I can tell you, things don't go well for me every season in some way, shape, or form. So be prepared to fail, but be prepared to recognize that there's a very rich learning in that, and that just adds to your knowledge for the next season. So don't be afraid of those things.
So with the decline of pollinators, I feel like we can't talk about this enough. What are some of your favorite ways to encourage pollinators in the garden?
Yeah, so I think oftentimes when we think of pollinators, we think of, the honeybees, but pollinators are several different types of organisms. You've got your bees, your bumblebees, your wasps, your butterflies, your moths, even we can be pollinators if you are hand pollinating something. But one way that I like to encourage that richness of organisms coming in to, help to pollinate these flowers is incorporating native flowers. For us here in North Carolina, that looks like our zinnias, our echinacea. I'll even bring in herbs that are not only, welcoming for the pollinators, but also great culinary herbs and medicinal herbs for us. And that's tulsi or holy basil. I like to even bring in some of these sweet basils, and these are often companion plants for some of the other vegetable plants that we grow as well. So thinking about some of those flowers, those floral plants, bringing those in, and also even when we're starting, before the season begins, there are some weeds that many people view as nuisance. We keep those. Purple dead nettle is a good one, and oh my gosh, it takes over the yard. But that is a great food source for many of our pollinators, especially after coming out of dormancy and out of the winter. So we keep some of those native weeds, at the start of the season as we're incorporating some of our native flowers and herbs and medicinal herbs as well.
Well, Ashlie, we greatly appreciate the time you've offered. How can people find out more about you on the internet, and how can they find your book?
Yes, so you can find me on Facebook and Instagram mostly, at The Mocha Gardener, and that should kind of pull up. I keep it consistent across all platforms, so there's nothing different there. And you can find my book at all major book retailers, Barnes & Noble, I think even at some of your local bookstores, and of course on Amazon as well. So if you have any questions, I like to talk with folks. So please, I welcome you to email me or reach out via, all of those social media platforms, and let's chat it up. Stay encouraged, and most importantly, enjoy the journey of gardening.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Ashlie, for your time and your knowledge for Holly and myself and all of our listeners.
Of course. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking with you guys this evening.